So I'm going to start off with saying that this is one of my favorite topics to be discussing with you, and I have to say, once again, I've gotten a great introduction from the previous two speakers on this very topic. We will be looking at the International Dark Sky Places here, which is a program that we started about 8 years ago with the Communities program and has since developed into parks and reserves in the last 2 to 3 years. It's a program that, just as the slide says, encourages community involvement in the preservation and restoration of our night skies. And as we've seen with just the last presentation, getting the community involved is essential in being part of a dark sky movement. It's very similar to that, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. Well, if you've got one person working on it, as soon as that one person leaves or moves or passes, the project's probably going to be finished. Whereas if you get the community involved, they're going to be doing this for the rest of the, or we can say for a lot longer than if you had one person working on it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to, like I said, involve the community, the public, and visitors to rally around a cause, and that cause being the night sky, the protection of the natural night sky. We're also trying to identify these locations that serve as reminders of a quality night sky for those, the public, the visitors, the community. So essentially there's 3 goals on all of these programs. They all vary, they're all flexible. As we just heard, you have to be flexible in these programs because communities are different, parks are different, and as you'll see, reserves are different. So identify the natural night as a resource for that community. Educate the public on this resource and its value, and then preserve and restore this resource. Go ahead and start off with the communities program. This is the night sky over Flagstaff, Arizona. We did hear this as a time-lapse photo, but Flagstaff has been protecting its night skies for 51 years now because of the Naval Observatory that's located there. They had their first dark sky ordinance in 1958, and this is a community of 50,000 people. So we're not talking about a small community, and Borrego Springs is fantastic, but we're talking 45,000 people more than Borrego Springs, and they have this kind of a quality night sky because they have gotten the community rallied around the support and curfews for their lights, full cutoff fixtures, not using lights a lot of times, and it's just a great example of what can happen. And as we just heard from Jem, this is Borrego Springs, California. They just received their certification. And the one thing that I think Jim left out was that you guys have been working on this program for over 2 years. And to move this program forward and do the retrofits required and get the community involvement. So it is a time-consuming project and program. And they had a community group that worked very hard to bring in other resources and outside resources, and the Palomar Observatory was very key on this program in protecting these night skies. And one of the things that they worked on that we received a number of complaints about was actually an airport beacon, and they worked with FAA regulators to actually lower the wattage of the airport beacon that was there because the one that was in place was much higher than required for the area. So while they couldn't get rid of the beacon altogether because of federal regulations, they were able to work with the federal government to actually implement changes. And moving on to the parks, this is Natural Bridges National Monument, and it is the first International Dark Sky Park awarded in 2006. And this photograph exemplifies what we're trying to preserve. With the parks, what we're looking for, again, is an exceptional commitment to and success in implementing night sky preservation and restoration. And that's where the time-consuming nature of these programs comes in. We want to be able to see that the parks, in this case, have gone out of their way to preserve their resource, to work with the surrounding communities to help preserve that resource, preserve the natural habitats, the public enjoyment. The issue with the parks is that it must be open to the public at night, or a region of the park must be open to the public at night so that the public can enjoy that resource. There's no sense in protecting it if the public can't see it. And then, of course, to encourage the administrators to identify that resource and then have the parks become environmental leaders in this movement. So on the eligibility for the parks, I just mentioned the public land issue. And regardless of managerial agency, in the U.S. structure at least, we have national parks, we have state parks, we have county parks, we have community parks. Any of those are eligible. It just has to be open to the public. It has to have an outstanding dark sky resource, and this is the key here, relative to the population it serves. We are obviously not going to have a night sky like the one seen in Natural Bridges at the stone circles that we visited last night. We're going to get very, very, very close, but it has to be relative to the population it serves. And we do have some sky quality requirements, and there's 3 tiers right now, gold, silver, and bronze, and they're described in full in the application process. 2 of the requirements here is that the park must have a lighting guideline for future planning efforts, and it has to have that proven commitment. So we want to see some of the retrofitting that's gone on. And the guidelines need to be stricter than any guidelines enforced by the regulatory agency of the park. So the example that I'm most familiar with, of course, is the U.S. National Park System, and they do have few regulations in place, but the parks that we've awarded this designation to have gone above and beyond that. So here's an all-sky view of Natural Bridges National Monument. And at the time this was taken, it was the only Bortle Class 2 sky seen in the lower 48. Since then, they've identified Great Basin National Park as having a Class 2 sky as well. And for reference, here's Joshua Tree National Park, which is in Southern California. It's also considered a dark sky site, but you can just see the difference in park. So just once again, that great picture of the arch. And the National Park Service has 391 park units. Mm-hmm. Sure. You know what? I can't see it in my slide either. I can email you these pictures if you want. That's Gunter, right? Okay. Yeah. Moving ahead. So the National Park Service in the U.S. has 391 park units, which include national monuments, national parks, seashores, battlefield sites, historic sites. And of those 391, there's 58 National Park Service national parks. And of those 58, there are now 16 that have nighttime activities such as astronomy-led tours, bat walks, those types of events. And those have become, in those 16 parks, the most popular visitor activities, which just tells you how much people are interested in this topic. They're looking for a way to get out and see the night, see the nighttime environment. Some of those include Joshua Tree, which you just saw, Petrified Forest, Death Valley, Yosemite, Great Basin, the Arches, Bryce Canyon, and Canyonlands, if any of you have visited any of those. So here's a state park in Pennsylvania, and I do have a map coming up later that'll identify the different locations of these. This is, again, the key is relative to the population it serves. On the east coast of the United States, especially the eastern seaboard, you've all seen how much light pollution is there. Well, this park has been able to preserve its night sky and has become a haven for East Coast amateur astronomers to visit and attend. It's one of the darkest locations accessible for that population. As part of the requirements of the park, you have to have public interpretive centers, and this is just an example from Cherry Springs as to what's available. Just as you're driving through the park, you can stop, you can read about what the park's done, read about the importance of the night sky, and have public awareness and education. Great picture of Cherry Springs, just another one to emphasize what we're trying to preserve through this program. The Geauga Park District Observatory Park. Now this is a county park. It's actually up for provisional status at this point because it hasn't completed the park structure itself. This is located right outside of Cleveland, Ohio, which is also in a very light polluted area. So this is actually going for a silver tier designation rather than a gold tier designation. And again, it's relative to the population it serves. It offers a haven for amateur astronomers, for folks just wanting to get out and see the night sky. This is one of the areas that we require in the application. We require a lighting survey of the lights available on the park. So this is just an example of what was taken to compile that survey. And that way we can identify whether or not the park actually qualifies as being dark sky friendly, so to speak. While it might have an exceptional night sky, if it's blasting globe lights or sag lens cobra heads, we want to be showing these parks off as the exception here. These are the ones that have gone above and beyond once again. And here's a time-lapse image of the Milky Way at the Geauga Park District. So this, to me, is probably the neatest of the programs because it involves a central core and the community surrounding it. It's the Dark Sky Reserves program, and this is actually in Canada, in Quebec, Canada. The reserve is a public or private land that's possessing an exceptional or distinguished quality of starry nights and nocturnal environment that's specifically protected for its scientific, natural, educational, cultural heritage, and or public enjoyment mission. The reserve was designated in 2007, was the first reserve, and it's formed through a partnership of multiple landowners and or administrators that have recognized the value of that central core. So here are the objectives of the reserves program. Again, public-private land, and to honor them and the community surrounding with exceptional commitment to and success in implementing dark sky preservation. We're encouraging the land administrators this time to identify dark skies as a valuable resource, again, to restore and preserve what's there, to promote the protection of the night skies, provide a form of recognition for those that are going above and beyond, and then encourage the areas to form public-private partnerships in protection of the night sky. Okay, that's perfect. And this is a different form of zoning than we've seen. This is Mount Megantic's three-zone system. And you'll be able to see the observatory in the center there, with Zone 1 being the zone of most protection, Zone 2, and then Zone 3. And we'll be talking about La Patrie, which is right there in Zone 1 here in just a moment. This is an example of how they broke down their process. One of the things that is important here is that when we're setting these requirements, we're also inspiring innovation. Now, many of you know that when you're doing nighttime observing on top of a hill, on top of at the telescope, there's no way you can drive down the mountain with your lights on because you're going to be interfering those that are doing their current observations. So rather than having an unlit road and rather than having to navigate in the dark down the mountain, what they've done is they've actually used these small diskettes that absorb the solar light and remain glowing for about 8 to 9 hours after the sun sets. So they've marked the roadway without lighting the roadway. And this is a great solution that can be used in other rural areas, not just in observatory areas, but to mark roadways where you need to be able to see where you're going, but you don't necessarily need the overhead light of a street light. So this is La Patrie, the village I was just speaking of during the retrofit. So this is the village before, and this is the village after. As you can see, this roadway here is a perfect example here. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fixtures. This roadway here is still lit very well. If you were walking down that roadway, you'd still feel very comfortable. And they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instead of the 8. And they are full cutoff as well.
Can I ask if anyone suggested that that's a photograph taken during the panel?
It's not. This is... It's a good question. This is from one of the observatory staff that's been working very hard on this program. And as an example, within the city, this is one of the industrial yards. So here's proof of the one of the industrial yards that went through a retrofit because of the work done on the reserve. So as you can see here, the top is the before, a combination of metal halide and mercury lights, and then high pressure sodium. And these are available. We can provide them to you. Just send me an email and let me know if you want these.
How many fixtures altogether, Kim, in the whole community?
Do you know, I'm not sure of the number, but I can tell you that because of the efforts here, they've actually noticed a 25% reduction in light pollution at the observatory in the night sky. And that's for all of the area around the observatory and the reserve. And a 1.5 million kilowatt hour per year usage in energy savings is what they've noticed since these have undergone. So this is just a small example of one of the tools that Mount Megantic region has implemented for standards in the area, for lighting standards. In zones 1 and 2, all lights, including signs, need to be turned off at 10 p.m. or 11 if you're in zone 3. Of course, they have exceptions for fixtures used for security lighting, storage areas, public pedestrian areas, and then outdoor sales areas, unloading, handling, need to be reduced by 75%. So this is just one of the methods that they used to achieve the results. Now here is that map that I showed you of North America, in particular the U.S., and I have it slightly color-coded. I'm not sure how well you can see, but the one pink is the reserve, which is right up here, and these locations are approximate. I tried to do as best as I could in copying them from Google Maps over. The whites are the park, so we've got Natural Bridges National Monument. This right here, that dark spot, is Cherry Springs. And then the gold is here, Yaga Park District, which Cleveland is right in this area. And then the communities are the red. So Jim showed you earlier, this is Borrego Springs, and then Flagstaff, Arizona here. And Great Basin National Park, for those I mentioned, there's another site too, is right up there. And they're working on an application right now. So for those not familiar with the Cinzano color scale or the Bortle scale, it's just a quick application. I think most of you in the audience are. And then we really are trying to move this outside of North America and become more international in scope. And I'm excited that Steve's here because I've spoken to Steve a few times by email on the Galway Forest Parks designation. And Zoltan is here, Hortzabagi, and the Zelik National Landscape Protection Area. And then as well, Pic de Midi in the Pyrenees of France is applying for the Reserve project. So just a quick few shots there. Galway Forest Park, and I'm sure Steve can answer plenty of questions if you have any of those. And then the two Hungarian sites, the Hortzabagi National Park and Zelik Landscape Protection Area. And if I may, at this time, I'd like to invite Zoltan up because he's actually submitting his application. I'm very excited about this. To become one of these prestigious areas. Oh, two Zoltans. Great.
One for the Hungarian Association and the other for the Dunatravel National Parks. And
excellent.
Actually, this is for the Jelitz landscape protection.
Yes, the landscape. Great. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Zoltan. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to reading this. So, and one last shot of Pic de Midi, and then we're all set.
Thanks so much.
Of course.
So, folks, we can take one question? Yes.
Has Tucson applied for a dark sky?
No, we haven't. So,
Any reason?
I haven't been able to find a committee willing to do it. So, no, Tucson has not.
You can add to your list another French observatory. It's the Haute-Provence Observatory in Saint-Michel Observatoire. It's between Pont-Cartier. Well, I can show you on the map exactly where it is.
Okay.
They've had an ordinance to restrict the city lights because basically the astronomers reside down or go down to the local wine bars in the afternoon, and we go back up to the observatories in the evening. It's walking distance away from the town.
Excellent.
And so the town has very low level of lighting at night.
We'll have to get in touch with them. The reason I had the Pic de Midi there is because Alain Legu's actually been working with them, and they're doing a conference next month on the very subject in France. And then I just found out there's a possibility that we might be adding a site in Portugal as well. I'm very excited to hear from folks about that. So, Terry?
Quickly, Terry.
Right. Can you just go back to the slide of the whole of the USA?
Sure.
You're pointing out for Regular Springs. It's very hard to see from that how that is such a dark sky site. It seems to be pretty well
in the light, yeah.
Area.
The arrow is in the white area. It should be back slightly.
Right.
Just a little.
It's in the dark area.
So in that little dark
Right there.
area below right of that white area, that makes a bit more sense. Okay.
But the interesting thing is that the Yaga Park district here, which is in this area in the light, has that incredible night sky. And again, it's relative to the population it serves. So I think we're...
Okay, yeah, thanks very much, Kevin.
Yep.